Hello, my name is James Spirek. I am the State Underwater Archaeologist of South Carolina, and my presentation is entitled A Shared Piece of Ordnance, the 9-inch Dahlgren Smoothbore aboard the Civil War gunboats USS Southfield and CSS Pee Dee. In keeping with the conference theme of maritime history of the Carolinas, this cannon certainly spans the history and archaeology of the two states. Jettisoned into the Great Pee Dee River by the crew of the CSS Pee Dee during the waning days of the American Civil War, the armament of the scuttled gunboat was recovered in 2015, completed treatment in 2019, and is now on display between the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs building and the Florence National Cemetery in Florence, South Carolina. The cannons are arrayed along a central sidewalk and mounted on replica 4-truck naval carriages behind brick walls that represent the bulwarks of a gunboat. The display of the gunboat's armament reflects the determined efforts of numerous individuals and organizations over many years to discover, recover, and preserve these cannons for public display. The armament of the gunboat was comprised of 3 cannons, 2 Brooke double-banded rifles, a 7-inch and a 6.4-inch, and a 9-inch Dahlgren Smoothbore. The pedigrees of the Brooke rifles were well established, having been cast at the Confederacy's Selma Naval Gun Foundry and Ordnance Works in Selma, Alabama in 1864 and directly shipped to arm the gunboat. Unlike the Brooke rifles, the provenience of the Dahlgren proved elusive until historical research placed the cannon aboard the sunken gunboat USS Southfield in the Roanoke River downstream of Plymouth, North Carolina. Lacking the necessary warships to contest the Union blockade, the Confederacy created several inland Navy yards to build warships and other vessels beyond the reach of the Union Navy. One such location was at Mars Bluff on the Great Pee Dee River, approximately 60 miles upriver from Winyah Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. The site proved attractive for a number of reasons, foremost being in proximity to a rail line to receive supplies, availability of timber resources, and transit of the finished warships to Winyah Bay to contest Union warships stationed off the coast and on the high seas. The Navy Yard successfully built several vessels, but is most well known for building the CSS Pee Dee, a steam-powered twin-screwed gunboat, schooner rigged with 2 masts, measuring 150 feet in length, 25 feet in beam, with a draft of 7.5 feet. The 3 cannons were mounted on pivot carriages, with the Brooke rifles at the bow and stern, and amidships the 9-inch Dahlgren Smoothbore. The gunboat was commissioned in early January 1865. This modern drawing of the gunboat is based on available historical information and artistic license. In early March 1865, the gunboat deployed for its sole combat mission by steaming upriver from Mars Bluff to Cheraw to cover withdrawing Confederate forces crossing the river from pursuing Union forces under command of General William Sherman, both armies ultimately bound to North Carolina. Remaining but a day and not firing a shot, the gunboat returned to the Navy Yard. There, the officers and crew received orders to scuttle the Pee Dee by jettisoning the guns at its mooring and then steaming downstream beyond the railroad bridge to set the gunboat ablaze and adrift to float downriver. The burning vessel drifted a short distance before hitting a snag and exploding. The gunboat then slipped beneath the waters of the Great Pee Dee River and into regional lore. The field work to discover and recover the 3 cannons occurred in a stretch of the Great Pee Dee River between Florence and Marion, with the upstream area in brown denoting the Mars Bluff Navy Shipyard and the downstream area in gold marking the location of the remains of the scuttled CSS Pee Dee. The wreck of the gunboat never completely escaped from local memory, as sections of the wreck were removed as a navigation hazard and salvaged over the years. But the main relics that many wanted to find were the 3 cannons jettisoned into the river. Many incorrectly assumed the guns were still with or near the wreck. In the 1950s, the local historical society engaged a team of U.S. Navy divers from Charleston to search for the 3 cannons, which proved fruitless. The search for the cannons later refocused on the waterfront of the Navy Yard after new historical research suggested that the cannons were jettisoned there prior to scuttling the gunboat, here shown during low water looking downriver towards the final resting place of the scuttled gunboat several miles beyond the modern railroad bridge. In 1986, the South Carolina Institute of Archaeology and Anthropology searched for the cannons and the remains of the CSS Pee Dee using a proton magnetometer with a spar-mounted sensor and detected numerous magnetic anomalies as depicted in the mag strip readings. Ski underwater archaeologists dove on several targets, but swift currents prevented efforts to determine the sources of the anomalies. The cannons yet remained elusive. Next, a private group called the CSS Pee Dee Research and Recovery Team, composed of avocational archaeologists, historians, sport divers, and other individuals, operating under a ski exclusive license in the mid-1990s, systematically investigated the waterfront and found numerous artifacts related to the Naval Yard, before finally discovering the 9-inch Dahlgren in 1995, followed by the 7-inch Brooke rifle in 2006. Both the tubes were embedded in the river bottom and close to the bank, here looking at the muzzle of the partially excavated Dahlgren. In 2008, SKIA received a $200,000 grant from the Florence-based Drs. Bruce and Lee Foundation to preserve the cannons and to undertake additional investigations to locate the missing 6.4-inch Brooke rifle. This also included hosting an East Carolina University program in Maritime Studies Field School in 2009. The Brooke rifle remained elusive until detected a bit further out in the stream during a period of low water in 2012. With the 3 cannons in hand, we finalized a loan agreement with the General Services Administration, the federal custodian of the cannons, and lifted them from the river in late September 2015. Happily, the operations went smoothly and quickly. Shown here is the 9-inch Dahlgren breaching the surface. The recovered cannons were placed on the bank and delivered to the conservation facility the next day. The transformation from concreted cannon to shiny conserved one was undertaken by the Warren Lash Conservation Center at the Clemson Restoration Institute in North Charleston from 2015 to 2019. Before and after views of the recovered and clean 9-inch Dahlgren revealed exterior surface details such as the sighting and firing mounts at the breech, and numerous engravings including serial numbers and the weight. A clean right trunnion face revealed the markings 9-inch engraved on the upper surface and 1862 the year cast on the lower. In addition to conserving the cannons, each were loaded for action with projectiles that were also conserved. The Dahlgren was loaded with a 9-inch spherical shell shown in the upper left image, and associated objects shown in the lower right image and clockwise from the top, the oak sabot, fragments of iron straps that secured the ball of the sabot, the bronze fuse, and a rubber gasket between the fuse and the ball. Even before the exterior surfaces were cleaned in the lab and the cannons were underwater, we were able to view some of the markings that were free of concretion. Here, the initials JMB on the left trunnion face, as well as observing the year 1862 on the right trunnion face, helped to determine the identity of the cannon. Historical records indicated the initials denoted Captain John M. Berrien, the naval inspector at the Fort Pitt Foundry in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from 1862 to 1864. Engraved on the surface of the copper alloy insert between the unused portside hammerlock clevis was 9-inch number 513, denoting the bore and serial number of the Dahlgren. But where did this Union 9-inch Dahlgren smoothbore come from? Dr. Larry Babbitt's, former director of the program in Maritime Studies at ECU, posited 3 potential sources for the Dahlgren: 2 sunken Union gunboats out west, and the USS Southfield sunk in Plymouth, North Carolina. Of the 3 candidates, Southfield seemed the most plausible due to geographical proximity and logistical simplicity during this phase of the war. To determine if indeed the 9-inch Dahlgren aboard the CSS Pee Dee was from the USS Southfield, we searched the records of the Navy Bureau of Ordnance at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. There we found several records of importance, particularly the register of 9-inch guns, to confirm our speculation. The spreadsheet revealed gun 513 was assigned to the Southfield, along with a notation that it was sunk aboard the gunboat and other details, such as weight of 9,193 pounds, which was also engraved on the breech, and interestingly, by December 2, 1863, had been fired 66 times during combat operations. A collection of ordnance returns also confirmed the gun aboard the Union gunboat with the April 1863 list, which included additional described markings. FP for the Fort Pitt Foundry, P for proofed by JM, although they forgot the B, and the additional detail that it was mounted broadside on a Marsilli carriage. The USS Southfield was a former ferry boat, as shown in these two photographs, operating between New York City and Staten Island from 1857 until purchased by the U.S. Navy in late 1861 as part of the naval contingent in the Burnside's expedition to the Sounds of North Carolina in early 1862. The battery of the converted gunboat consisted of one 100-pounder Parrott rifle and three 9-inch Dahlgren Smoothbores. This photograph shows the arrangement of the 9-inch battery of the former ferryboat USS Commodore Perry, like that aboard the Southfield, and a closer look at a 9-inch Dahlgren mounted on a Marsilli carriage aboard the former ferryboat USS Hunchback. Southfield participated in the successful Burnside's expedition, and with the region under nominal Union control, the gunboat was ordered to the James River in Virginia to support the Peninsula Campaign under command of General George McClellan. Following the failure of that movement, Southfield underwent repairs in Norfolk, and its battery strengthened with an additional two 9-inch Dahlgren Smoothbores and a 12-pounder boat howitzer. This is when 513 came aboard the gunboat. In late 1862, Southfield returned to a deteriorating military situation in the Sounds, and from then until early 1864 spent most of its time at Plymouth on the Roanoke River, although frequently called upon with other gunboats to quell Confederate actions throughout the Sounds contesting federal control. Fears of a Confederate ironclad became realized when Southfield was rammed and sunk in the Roanoke River by the ram CSS Albemarle during an attack on Plymouth by Confederate forces on April 19, 1864. After capturing the town, the Confederates recovered the battery of the Union gunboat, which included five 9-inch Dahlgren Smoothbores. Three of the Dahlgrens stayed in Plymouth and eventually were recaptured spiked by the Union Navy, but two others were apparently sent elsewhere. As we now know, 513 was shipped by steamer up the Roanoke River to Weldon and then transferred aboard a train on the Weldon, Wilmington, and Manchester Railroad and arrived at the Mars Bluff Navy Yard sometime between September and October to arm the Confederate gunboat. Besides the cannon's historical and archaeological connection to the Carolinas, there was one more link, albeit unwitting, between the two states and the two gunboats. The sonogram reveals the remains of the Southfield on the bottom of the Roanoke River. The wreck was relocated in 1991 by Dr. Gordon Watts of Tidewater Atlantic Research during a compliance project, and later that year ECU held a field school to document the remains of the converted gunboat. The field school supported the historical and archaeological research undertaken by one of the graduate students for his master's thesis, and that graduate student, many years after completing his degree, once again reunited with the relic from the Southfield, a serendipitous turn of events to participate in the recovery of the Dahlgren that once formed the battery of the USS Southfield and then salvaged for use aboard the CSS Pee Dee. As may be expected from a project this lengthy and complex, many organizations and individuals collaborated to undertake the successful preservation of these cannons. In conclusion, the display of the Dahlgren and the Brooke rifles between the final resting places of past soldiers and sailors, and where veterans obtain assistance, aims to serve as a testament to American service and sacrifice, rather than as a memorial to a disputed and contentious past. Memorialization of Confederate leaders and objects is fraught with tensions, as most Americans know, but we hope that this display will serve as an educational vehicle to learn about the conflict and the efforts undertaken by the Confederacy to build naval warships in out-of-the-way places to contest Union naval supremacy and, on occasion, turn captured guns against their former owners. That is what we wish for these historical and archaeological artifacts to become, while silently attesting to the war from whence they came. Thank you for your attention.